In this video, I'm reviewing the new 4K Director's Edition of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Released in 1982, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan was directed by Nicholas Meyer. The film is set several years after the events of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. The plot involves Admiral Kirk and the crew of the Starship Enterprise investigating a distress call from a Federation research station and discover that the Khan Noonien Singh, a genetically superior criminal from the 20th century, has escaped exile and plans to use a weapon of mass destruction to get revenge on Kirk and conquer the Federation. After the financial success but poor critical reception of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, Paramount Pictures greenlit a follow-up film on the condition that it be a lot cheaper to make. TV producer Harv Bennett was approached to develop a story. Not having seen the original series, Bennett did his homework by watching old episodes and was impressed by the first season episode Space Seed, which featured the first appearance of Khan Noonien Singh. Bennett thought Khan was a great villain and worth bringing back. After several scripts were written, Nicholas Meyer, director of the time travel film Time After Time, a movie well worth checking out by the way, was asked to come aboard the project. Meyer had also never watched Star Trek, but was interested and wrote his own version of the screenplay uncredited. Today, 40 years after its original release, Wrath of Khan is still by far the best Star Trek film ever made. What's amazing is that it was actually the cheapest one to make. Star Trek II had a budget of $12 million, a whole lot less than the $45 million that the motion picture ended up costing the studio. While some of the cost-cutting measures are obvious, a lot of the early spaceship footage in the movie are recycled shots from the motion picture, and the lack of that movie's massive sets and crowd scenes. Star Trek II makes use of every penny, with terrific space battles, impressive early computer animation, and the redesigned Starfleet uniforms are a huge improvement on the motion pictures. So good in fact, they were the standard Starfleet uniform for the rest of the classic movie era. While the motion picture was a cerebral, slow-burning space odyssey, The Wrath of Khan is much more true to the TV series and is more action-packed. Nicholas Meyer brought a more nautical adventure theme to this film, right down to the ship's bell and boatswain's call. Also, James Horner's musical score emphasised the swashbuckling feel of the film. Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, never saw Starfleet as a military organisation, was disappointed with its depiction in Star Trek II, and therefore had very little to do with this movie, besides an executive consultant credit. In Nicholas Meyer's DVD commentary for the film, he explains that he saw Starfleet at least as military as the Coast Guard, and depicted them as a combined service. Ricardo Montalban plays Khan, reprising his role that he first played in the 1967 original series episode Space Seed. Khan is a genetically engineered tyrant that was exiled to a barren planet by Kirk after a failed attempt to take over the Enterprise. You see, every great hero has a villain that defines them. Batman has the Joker. Sherlock Holmes has Professor Moriarty. Johnny Depp has Amber Heard. And Khan is Kirk's true arch nemesis. When Montalban was offered the chance to play Khan again, he had forgotten how to play the role since it had been 15 years, and was then currently playing the light-hearted role of Mr. Rourke on TV's Fantasy Island. After viewing Space Seed a few times again, however, he felt the character coming back. Montalban gives a sensational performance as Khan in this film.
There she is. Not so wounded as we were led to believe. So much the better.
While he's extremely intelligent, he's driven mad by his desire for revenge on Kirk. And as evil as he is, it's hard not to sympathise with him just a little. Khan truly does love his people, and while he's capable of extreme violence, the scene where his second-in-command Joaquin dies is actually quite moving.
I shall avenge you.
In the original Space Seed episode, Khan is a product of genetic engineering, and is just following his true nature. While the episode ended with him agreeing to be marooned on planet Ceti Alpha 5 to lead his people, we find out in this film that the planet went through a natural disaster. Khan lived through hell for 15 years, and lost a lot of people, including his wife.
200 years ago, I was a prince with power over millions.
The scariest villains are often the ones who think they are doing the right thing, and Khan feels justified in his rampage. Khan is very much like the character of Captain Ahab in Moby Dick. This was another way Nicholas Meyer added to the naval theme of the film. Khan quotes this book throughout the movie.
I'll chase him round the moons of Nibia and round the Antares maelstrom and round perdition's flames before I give him up.
In fairness, he was stuck on that planet for a long time, with no Netflix. So I guess he read that book quite a lot. The scenes with Khan in this film are some of the darkest in the entire franchise. Khan's interrogation of Captain Tyrell and Chekhov is extremely scary, and straight out of a horror film. Not to mention the scene where he mind controls the pair in an attempt to kill Kirk. By the way, has anyone ever noticed the similarity between Ricardo Montalban's Khan and his character of Ludwig in the comedy movie The Naked Gun? They both mind control people into being their assassins.
I must kill Papschbeer.
Anyone can be an assassin.
Despite all the action and adventure in this movie, the story is really about aging, friendship, and new beginnings. Kirk is overseeing a training cruise for the new crew of the Enterprise, but clearly isn't happy with his lot in life. Both McCoy and Spock keep reminding him that he belongs in the captain's chair of a starship. In fact, whether it was planned or not, Wrath of Khan is the beginning of a trilogy with several storylines that continue through the next few films. William Shatner has never been better than in this film. Shatner had at this point always played Kirk in a very energetic, youthful manner, and was extremely reluctant to portray him as a middle-aged person past his prime. Hart Bennett convinced Shatner, however, that he could age gracefully like Spencer Tracy, not knowing that Shatner had actually worked with Tracy on Judgment at Nuremberg. The initial attack on the Enterprise by the Reliant is a masterclass in action and suspense. Keeping with the naval theme of the film, the battle scenes between the two ships is often portrayed like submarine warfare, inspired by classic war films like Run Silent, Run Deep. Khan and his crew have taken over the Starship Reliant and get a first strike in due to the element of surprise. I've always found it interesting that the film never makes more of the fact that Kirk makes a serious mistake in letting Khan gain an early advantage, despite Lieutenant Sadik quoting regulations that Kirk ignores.
Sir, may I quote General Order 12 on the approach of any vessel when communications have not been established?
Lieutenant, the Admiral is well aware of the regulations.
While Kirk does admit this later, it doesn't change the fact that people died because of his mistake, particularly Scotty's nephew. Kirk does ultimately make up for this in his eventual defeat of Khan, but he never faces any serious repercussions for being negligent, which would have been an interesting subject for this or even the following films to explore. What I've always enjoyed about the battle scenes in this movie are the military tactics that are used. Ultimately, Kirk defeats Khan because of how well he works with Spock.
You followed me this far, he'll be back. But from where?
He's intelligent, but not experienced. This pattern indicates two-dimensional thinking.
This is a great example of how a subordinate talks to his captain. He never presumes to tell Kirk the proper course of action, but merely reminds him of that which he already knows, and Kirk acts on it. Kirstie Alley plays Lieutenant Sadik. She is Spock's protege and commander in training, and represents the theme of the old guard being replaced with the new. While she appears Vulcan in the film, the novelization makes it clear that she is of mixed heritage, which explains why she is crying in the funeral scene at the end of the film. The character was recast in the next two films and played by Robin Curtis, who I actually prefer in the role. Leonard Nimoy returns here for what was thought at the time his final appearance as Spock. Nimoy, at this stage of his career, had grown tired of being recognised just as Spock to fans and critics, and had even written a book called I Am Not Spock. He initially did not want to be in this film, but was tempted back with the promise of a dramatic death scene. I mentioned in my review of the motion picture that Spock went through some major character growth in that movie, and you can see the effects of that here in Nimoy's performance. While in the first movie he's almost robotic, here, while he's still cool and logical, he actually does have a sense of humour, and is warm and friendly, comparatively speaking, and even gently teases Kirk and McCoy.
Commanding a starship is your first best destiny. Anything else is a waste of material.
I would not presume to debate you.
That is wise.
Spock's death scene, even today 40 years after the film's release, is one of the greatest in cinema history. and despite the character being brought back in subsequent films, has lost none of its emotional impact. This is a movie I've watched countless times over the years, but I had the great pleasure of seeing this new 4K restoration of it in the cinema yesterday. It's pretty much the same as the director's cut that's been available on home media for 20 years now, but it's never looked better. It's really saying something as to how well this film has aged that no new visual effects shots have been added to the film. I'm usually very wary of extended cuts of movies that are already fine the way they are, but the additional scenes in this cut make an already great movie even better. They're really just interesting little character moments, like McCoy explaining why he gives Kirk a pair of glasses, and more footage of Scotty's nephew, which makes his death scene more impactful. I'm one of those people who thinks this movie is pretty near perfect, but seeing it in the cinema yesterday for the first time with an audience, there are one or two scenes that got some unintentional laughter. Like what Carol Marcus says to Kirk when he says he feels old.
What am I feeling? Old. Worn out.
Let me show you something that'll make you feel young as when the world was new.
That's what she said!
By the way, I highly recommend the novel Terrain in Hell by Greg Cox. It's a fantastic book which chronicles the 15-year period where Khan was stranded on SETI Alpha 5, and is a great read in its own right. Khan is pretty much the hero of the story in that one, and it really puts Star Trek II in new context after reading it. Overall though, The Wrath of Khan represents the very best of Star Trek, and it's by far the best movie in the series. It's a gorgeous movie to look at, has great action and suspense, the musical score is incredible, and the villain is one of the all-time greats. In fact, the movie's success is both the best and worst thing to happen to Star Trek. While it remains a classic to this day, subsequent movies and TV episodes in the franchise borrowed a little too much from it. There are at least 3 movies in a row later on in the film series that have a maniacal villain out for revenge with a doomsday weapon. And several scenes and dialogue from Wrath of Khan are copied and pasted shamelessly. I'm going to have to make videos on all Star Trek movies now, haven't I? Oh well, as Captain Kirk once said,
Sounds like fun.
thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't done so already, share with your friends, click the bell for notifications, and let me know in the comments what is your favourite scene in The Wrath of Khan. Most importantly, I hope you all look after yourselves, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye for now.